My name is Andy, and together with the wonderful String Quartet, we're going to demonstrate some ways in which you can compose new music for a small ensemble. This video is all about melody. Melody can be used to describe a pattern of notes played one after another to create a musical phrase. It's what we often refer to as a tune. Melodies can be a really important element of music to help create the mood and character of a piece. There are lots of different ways to compose and develop a melody. One way of composing a melody is by using scales. There are lots of examples of scales in the student resource pack. You could choose one of these to start creating your melody. I'm going to do that now. I've chosen A minor. So to start composing my melody, I'm going to have a go at improvising with different patterns from that chosen scale. I could use a keyboard or another instrument or even my voice. I'm going to demonstrate that now for you. Or if you have a particular idea for a rhythm, try applying different pitches from your chosen scale to that rhythm and you'll create a melody. So for example, here's a rhythm. And now I'll put some pitches from my A minor scale to that rhythm. Or you could experiment with different jumps between pitches in your scale. We call the different sizes of jumps melodic intervals. Perhaps you could create small musical ideas that evoke a particular mood or energy for your piece. Have a look at the student resource pack for some more ideas about intervals. Another starting point to composing a melody might be to use a game or a strategy to choose a limited set of pitches from a scale. Then arrange these into any order you like. For example, I got a pack of cards here that feature notes from the A minor scale. That was my chosen scale earlier on. And what I'm going to do is shuffle the cards up and then pick 5 cards, and they will become the pitches that I use for my melody. So my first one is G. My second one is another G. My third note this time is a C. My fourth note is a C. Bit of a pattern here. And my last note that I'm going to choose for mine is D. Now, what I could do is keep it in that order. Or if I didn't like that repetition of notes, I could change it up a little bit if I wanted to. And then I can also apply a rhythm to those pitches. And then once I've done that, I'll have had a melody. And one final example of composing a melody is to use a chord progression. And what you would do is use that chord progression as the skeleton from which to create a melody. There are more details in the texture video to help you do this. Now, composers don't just create new melody after new melody after new melody. Instead, they reuse, recycle, and develop their ideas throughout the piece. One of the simplest ways to develop a melody is to repeat the material, but change a few of the intervals, the distance between the 2 pitches in a melody. Or you could change some of the rhythms. Here is one of my melodic ideas from before. Here it is again with a few interval and rhythm changes. By changing this pitch from F to G, I've made the interval bigger in my new version. Notice that the following note, the F, previously an E, moved with it to preserve the nice step down in the melody we heard before. I've also changed the rhythm in this musical moment too, to further highlight something is different. This makes the music feel like it's reaching somewhere new. And even though it's different, you can certainly hear how it relates to the original melody. The differences between pitches, or intervals, have their own personalities and create different effects. There's some more help with this in the student resource pack. Another way of developing a melodic idea is by playing a passage of notes in what's called a sequence. This is when a composer repeats a passage of music, but starting it at a higher or lower pitch than the original. For example, here's the very beginning of my melody, starting on an A. Now, if I play this in a sequence, it could sound like this. I've chosen to sequence the melody starting on E and then D. When using this sequencing technique, you could apply it to the whole melody or just a small part of it. Jessie Montgomery uses both of these techniques together in her piece called Strum. First, we hear this melody. Jessie Montgomery then creates a variation of this material using a bit of the sequencing technique, but also changing some of the intervals. In the variation, the start of the melody is sequenced, starting on a D this time instead of an A. This time, she also uses a bigger interval on the melodic jump, using what's called a major seventh. That means jumping 11 semitones rather than a major sixth, which is made up of 9 semitones. Afterwards, she returns back to her sequence. This combination of techniques will usually mean that the chord underneath changes too, which adds new colours into your music to keep it interesting. Another technique composers often use to develop their melodies is to play them in reverse. This is called in retrograde motion. For example, here's the very beginning of a melody I created earlier. Now, if I play this in retrograde motion, it'd sound like this. This is a technique used a lot in 20th century music. Another technique used a lot in that same time period is called inversion. This is where the melody is turned upside down. The same melodic intervals are used, but they go up instead of down, or they go down instead of up. Jessie Montgomery combines the retrograde technique and the inversion technique on a 3-note melodic motif to create a really interesting new section of music. First of all, take a listen to the 3-note motif played by the viola. This motif is actually the first 3 notes of the cello melody from the beginning of the piece, starting on a different pitch and being played in reverse, retrograde motion. The second violin then echoes an inverted version of this 3-note motif. The cello joins in with the second violin, playing the same notes, but in a lower octave. Meanwhile, the first violin is playing pizzicato chords to add some texture and harmony to the music. Let's take a listen to that passage of music all together. Composers might also develop their melodic material by taking a distinctive feature in their melody and imitating it in different instruments. Listen to this 4-note motif taken from String Quartet number 8, composed by Dmitri Shostakovich. When this motif is first introduced in the piece, it's passed around all the different instruments in the quartet, creating what's called a polyphonic texture. This passing around of the motif between the different instruments is called imitation. Let's hear the quartet play this very slowly first, so we can identify the motif being passed around the instruments. Can you hear? It starts in the cello, then passed to the viola, then the second violin, then the first violin, and so on. Let's hear it now at its correct tempo. Later in the piece, Shostakovich uses this motif again. The duration of the notes have been stretched from crotchets into semibreves. Stretching durations, or making the notes longer like this, is a technique called augmentation. And going the other way, contracting the durations, or making the notes shorter, is called diminution. And these are great techniques for creating variations of your melodic ideas. Another way of creating a variation on a distinctive motif is to add or take away some of the notes. For example, expanding a 4-note motif into a 6-note one, or subtracting a 10-note motif into an 8-note one. And again, this is a technique associated with 20th century music, a style called minimalism. Anna Meredith uses the technique in her piece Tugamo for String Quartet. Take a listen to this 4-note motif played by the cello. This later changes into a 6-note motif, where Anna Meredith has added 2 notes. So there's lots of techniques in this video, from starting points to composing a melody to lots of ideas for developing your melodies into longer phrases, or to create new changed versions or variations of your melodies. So you could experiment with different techniques to create a big bank of developments and transformations. These will have different energies and moods too. Then you can draw on these experiments while you're making decisions about what should or could come next in your piece. Think about the structure and how your different ideas can be combined or put together into different textures. That's the end of this video now, but please do take a look at some of our other videos on how to compose for small ensembles. We're really looking forward to seeing what you produce.